I had a high school romance. My girlfriend, Liu Ryan, was the best student in our class. Because of this, I faced resentment from many classmates and all the teachers. Everyone said I was holding my girlfriend back. The class teacher called me out several times for conversations. He even paid for late-night snacks just to talk to me. He shared his life reflections with me. It could all be summarized in one sentence. If you love her, you should want the best for her. At this age, breaking up is what's best for her. I could feel the sincerity in my teacher's words. So I went back and suggested a breakup, but she refused. The following week, back at school, the teacher rearranged the seating. I was moved to the last row. My girlfriend was placed in the first row. More importantly, her new desk mate was none other than my known rival in love. She was an excellent student, ranking just below my girlfriend in class. In the eyes of many, they seemed like a much better match. As expected, he openly pursued my girlfriend, gaining the silent approval of both classmates and teachers. Everything fell into place for him. The class teacher practically helped him along. Every teacher, as if planned, either assigned them to create a bulletin board together, or sent them to attend meetings as a pair, even for the New Year's Eve celebration. The music teacher bent the rules for them, letting them sing a duet by Wang Liham, Love Because It's in the Heart. It was the grand finale. And every day at noon during preparations. At night, they spent a lot of time alone in the dance studio rehearsing. They choreographed the moves. After New Year's Eve passed, the two of them became popular at school. They were recognized as the school's official couple. My girlfriend either genuinely didn't notice or pretended not to understand. She couldn't see any of the changes around her. I wandered through life like a walking corpse, living like a clown under the spotlight. Every time I stepped into the classroom, I was overwhelmed with shame. The most thing was, my rival's birthday was the same day as mine. And yet, I had no idea. On my birthday, after the evening self-study session, the class president asked everyone to stay behind. Then someone turned off the lights. Everyone started singing the birthday song in unison. In that instant, my tears flowed uncontrollably, my cheeks burning, every inch of my skin feeling the warmth. But when the lights came back on, all eyes weren't on me. All the voices weren't singing for me. My scalding tears instantly froze into a painful awkwardness. I quietly slipped out. But the laughter and joy followed me as I walked away. From that moment on, I truly became insecure. I distanced myself from others. I stopped talking. I hated school. I feared crowds. I skipped classes. I wandered aimlessly. I disappeared. I gave up on myself. My girlfriend tried multiple times to find me. She kept calling me. She sent me many long messages. She said she noticed something was off with me, but didn't know why I had changed. Oh my God. She had no idea why I had changed like this. A massive sense of loneliness swept over me. It made me feel like the whole world had nothing to do with me anymore. It wasn't until a week later that my mother finally found me. Seeing her, I felt a pang of guilt. She must have been exhausted these past few days. Her hair was messy and oily. Her eye bags were huge. And her voice was hoarse. The class teacher, as if catching me red-handed, said I had skipped too many classes without reason, and that they had to expel me. My mother was terrified when she heard the word expel. In her eyes, expulsion meant being kicked out, which meant no more chance to study. In front of everyone, she suddenly dropped to her knees, begging the class teacher to revoke the expulsion. At that moment, I saw my usually strong and shrewd mother humble herself completely. It wasn't that she wasn't strong anymore, or that she wasn't smart. It was because someone had found her weakness, and that weakness was me. Many people were gathered around, watching and laughing at me. They pointed fingers, saying I deserved it. that I was unfilial, and that I had brought this on myself. Seeing that the class teacher remained unmoved, my mother rushed to the car and grabbed a few live chickens, shoving them into the teacher's hands, saying these were free-range chickens from our farm. They taste great. You should try them. Please withdraw the expulsion. Keep his school enrollment intact. Even if he has to move his desk outside the classroom to attend class, that's fine. I promise you. He will behave. But perhaps because the rope wasn't tied well. A few chickens broke free, flapping and running wildly everywhere. More and more teachers and students gathered to watch the spectacle. They all used their cold, indifferent stares and their condescending attitudes to crush me, protecting what they believed was the true couple. In the end, the class teacher, fearing the situation might spiral out of control, reluctantly agreed to my mother's plea. I returned to that classroom, the very place that had inflicted endless pain upon me, the classroom I had tried to escape countless times. But I had no choice but to go back. For my mother's sake. Even if I were to die, it would have to be in that classroom. In a fit of anger, I rushed to the podium, scanning the room with a sweeping gaze. Then I bowed deeply to the teacher, tears streaming down my face. I'm sorry, teacher. I've caused you trouble. I'm sorry, teacher. It's my fault. As I kept bowing, tears fell one by one onto the floor. I knew within myself that these weren't just tears of regret or guilt. They were mostly tears of deep-seated shame and insecurity. Since then, my girlfriend still refused to break up with me. But she no longer interacted much with me in front of others. She kept me tied to her, while at the same time avoiding me, though I could attend class again. Every morning, afternoon, and evening study session, I could only watch as my girlfriend and her desk mate worked together, helping each other with their studies. They chatted and laughed, especially during morning and evening reading sessions. Those were my absolute nightmare. I watched as they recited to each other. Let me recite this for you, and you can recite it for me. After finishing, they wouldn't forget to exclaim excitedly, "Wow, you memorized it so quickly." During the evening study sessions, their voices discussing problems were always so loud. The teachers overseeing the evening study sessions not only didn't stop their discussions, but instead, they praised them, complimenting them repeatedly, saying they were creating a positive learning atmosphere for the class. They became more and more inseparable, their bond growing stronger, relying on each other more deeply. Both the teachers and classmates gradually accepted this peaceful dynamic, as if whether early love was good or bad depended on the people involved. I endured it silently, quietly memorizing vocabulary by myself, studying economics and politics, reciting poetry and history. On weekends, my girlfriend would still go for walks with me, talking with me about many things. Sometimes she would even bring her books along, reciting passages to me, then asking me to recite them back to her. But each time, while we were in the middle of reciting, she would bring him up, and every conversation would eventually turn to him. If she didn't mention him in 3 sentences, she would bring him up in 3 steps. He might never know, but my sensitive heart had long been riddled with holes, and at that moment, it felt as if he was rubbing salt into each one of them. I felt heartbroken, but I didn't say anything. I didn't show it either. I kept my face calm, acting as if nothing had happened. The more she talked about him with enthusiasm, the more indifferent I acted. Occasionally, I would respond with something like, "You two seem great together," or "I'm so envious of you both," or "That's amazing, just make sure not to let it affect your studies." This distant, yet close relationship continued for quite a while. Just when I was almost getting used to this state of affairs, one night, out of the blue, she sent me a message. How did we end up like this? I fell into deep thought. Yes, how did we end up like this? Then she sent another message. Maybe years from now, when we look back, we'll feel regret. When I saw the word regret, a sharp pain pierced my heart. It was as if we both instinctively knew how the story would end. Yet neither of us made a move to save it from falling apart. Isn't this kind of regret the most man-made of all? With that thought, I replied, "Let's go out this dragon boat festival." Then I closed my eyes, replaying all our memories. In the second semester of the first year of high school, we became classmates because we both chose the humanities track. Class 25 of the humanities had just been formed. And soon after, she shone in the first exam, securing the top spot. From then on, she caught the attention of all the teachers. The English teacher in particular felt she resembled her own daughter. Over time, the teacher started to see her daughter in Liu Ryan. The English teacher had been divorced for many years, and her only daughter had gone to live in England with her ex-husband. She hadn't seen her daughter in a long time. One day, during class, while analyzing an essay, the teacher grew emotional, and she shared stories about her daughter with us. It was in that moment I realized the English teacher was a person marked by sorrow. Liu Ryan was an incredibly quiet girl, always speaking in a soft voice. Even her smiles were shy and delicate, like a flower bud just about to bloom. The most amusing thing was, whenever someone looked at her intently, she would quickly blush, turning as red as a ripe apple. It wasn't that she was shy. It was just her natural reaction. I would often tease her, just to see her face change. By coincidence, these traits matched perfectly with those of the English teacher's daughter. Because of this, she was always favored by the English teacher. At first, we didn't interact much. Even though we had been classmates for nearly half a semester, we hadn't exchanged many words in person. It was only through the class group chat that I added her on QQ. Occasionally, I would like her posts on her social feed. One day, I saw a video of her roller skating on her profile. I casually commented, saying I wanted to learn. "Just teach me, egg." Who could have thought that these four words would entangle our previously independent lives? Soon after, she proactively asked if I wanted to go roller skating. Filled with curiosity, I followed her to the rink. I thought it would be easy, but I had overestimated myself. My stubborn nature caused me to fall dozens of times that day. Later, as we took a break, I watched her skate for a while. She wore a long white dress, gliding effortlessly across the rink, graceful and natural, moving so smoothly. Her long hair floated behind her, as if she were a celestial maiden dancing on clouds. Suddenly, a line came to mind. In stillness, she is like a flower reflected on water. In movement, she resembles a willow swaying in the wind. It was as if those words were written just for her. A strange feeling began to stir within me. And at that very moment, she skated over to me, extended her hand, and motioned for me to skate with her. But I chickened out and shook my head in refusal. She smiled softly. She teased me, "Don't be scared. I'll protect you." Who would have thought? This quiet and reserved girl had such an interesting soul? I couldn't refuse anymore. I reached out my hand, slowly getting up. Maybe I was overthinking it, but this was the first time I held a girl's hand. While skating, I was especially cautious, afraid that if I fell, I'd pull her down with me. But what you fear always seems to come true. Someone was skating toward us from the opposite direction, rushing toward us at full speed. In a panic, I lost control of my feet. My skate collided directly with hers. In the most unbelievable, dramatic fashion, she fell right on top of me. I don't know if two people always fall in such a way at the skating rink, but at that moment, my confused heart suddenly burned with passion. I saw her face up close, smelled the fragrance of her hair, and even the air she exhaled had a unique scent. That must have been the heart of a young boy racing. Her expression shifted ever so slightly, but she didn't seem to mind. After skating, it was dinner time. I casually asked if she wanted to grab a bite to eat. She gladly agreed. It was our first dinner together. We both spoke very little, yet it felt so comfortable and natural. There wasn't the slightest bit of awkwardness. She didn't eat egg yolks and asked if I wanted them. I nodded sure. She pierced it with her fork, bringing it to my mouth. I couldn't help but smile. Was this for me? She smiled too, her face blooming like a flower. If you think it is, then it is, she said with a playful grin. From that moment, I was completely smitten. After dinner, when I suggested we take a stroll in the park, she agreed without hesitation. The park at night was incredibly peaceful, with a gentle evening breeze. Under the soft, amber glow of the streetlights, our long shadows naturally intertwined as our hands held each other. The park wasn't that big. We circled it again and again, as if we were greedily begging fate for more time. After returning home, I was dying to confess my feelings to her, but I kept hesitating, afraid it would be too abrupt. Time moved too quickly, and I spent the entire night wrestling with my thoughts, unable to sleep. Back at school, we resumed our distant, indifferent behavior towards each other. No one noticed anything different. No one would have guessed that these two seemingly unrelated people had shared a brief but precious memory. 2 weeks later, I couldn't hold back any longer. After much deliberation, I finally sent her a message. You made me believe that love never needs time to build. It's just two souls reuniting after a long separation. Before we met for the first time, we had already met countless times before. I waited for a long time, until my phone finally buzzed. Her reply came in the vast river of time spanning billions of years. Our fleeting lives pass by in the blink of an eye. But even so, my days may still be long and sweet because of you. And just like that, we were together. Quietly, yet as naturally as water flows. We spent weekends watching movies, boating, visiting bookstores to read and brew tea, walking along coastal boardwalks, listening to the wind and waiting for the moon. We hiked mountains, stepping on stones and admiring flowers. We stood on the rooftop of tall buildings, chasing clouds as if they were within reach. We went to the river's edge, standing by the water under a light drizzle. The happiness of first love quietly filled the ordinary moments of our lives. Before long, word about us spread throughout the school. I was full of joy, thinking we would be met with blessings. But instead, we were met with malicious attacks from many classmates. It happened after a physical education class. When we were heading to the cafeteria together for lunch, I whispered to her, while playing basketball just now, something happened. She looked puzzled. What? I scratched my head and blurted out, my pants ripped. She was stunned for a moment, then burst into uncontrollable laughter. I urged her to stop, saying, let's eat first. I don't want you to go hungry. I'll sit in the corner. You get the food today. As always, she agreed without hesitation. But such a trivial event somehow spread like wildfire in the class, becoming the talk of everyone. It seemed like everyone knew. He's not even a real man. He made a girl wait in line to get food while he just sat there. Do you guys know? The guy in my class is such a jerk. He bullies Liu Ryan every day, making her copy his homework, and even making her wash his lunchbox. Hey, let me tell you something. I heard that guy was raised in a single-parent family. He seems really well-behaved. But I looked into it. His dad was no good. He abandoned the family early on and started a new one somewhere else. I also heard that he asked a girl out before and tried to do something inappropriate with her. When she refused, he ghosted her. That's why he transferred to our school. Rumors swirled, bizarre and varied, with different versions spreading around. They traveled far and wide, and naturally, I became the target of everyone's scorn. I still remember vividly one particular time. When I was walking with Liu Ryan on the school path, we ran into a few classmates, and they made no effort to hide their contemptuous glares at me. In a mocking tone, they sneered at Liu Ryan. Oh, look at you, so graceful like a swan. How did you end up with a toad like him? That sentence, even years later, still holds the same sting. It made me feel utterly humiliated. The pain from it is something I still carry. Even the teachers, having heard the rumors, held grudges against me. My pride didn't allow me to explain myself, so I distanced myself from everyone, like smoke fading into the clouds. It was around this time that my rival stepped in. He began openly bringing breakfast to Liu Ryan, walking her back to the dorm without hesitation. It was a blatant, audacious act. He was stealing her away in broad daylight. Liu Ryan was never one to refuse kindness. And as my rival's advances grew bolder, supported by both teachers and classmates, he naturally became the one constantly by her side, thinking about all of this. And comparing it to the present, tears welled up in my eyes. Dragon Boat Festival came quickly. We had made plans to go to the riverside and watch the dragon boat races. At the pavilion by the bridge, I saw she had arrived early. At first, I didn't understand why she was there so early. But when I arrived, I realized my rival had already intercepted her before I could. He was chatting with Liu Ryan, and during their conversation, he learned about our date that day. He then asked Liu Ryan, "Is it okay if I come along too? You two can enjoy yourselves, and I'll take photos for you." Liu Ryan didn't refuse. In fact, she agreed. Not only that, but she also accepted his suggestion to leave early that day, and they went out for breakfast together. When I arrived, they were already laughing and chatting away, full of excitement, making me feel like the third wheel in my own date. I must admit, that day was one of the most humiliating days of my life. I ended up following behind them, reduced to being their photographer. As summer break approached, Liu Ryan found a part-time job, helping out at a milk tea shop. What I never expected was that the milk tea shop was owned by the English teacher's brother-in-law. He had recommended Liu Ryan for the job, and naturally, my rival was also brought into work there. I tried applying as well. I pleaded and did everything I could, even reciting a well-prepared series of professional lines perfectly. But I failed to impress the manager. Disappointment and frustration left me utterly drained. With no other choice, I settled for second best and took a volunteer position at the nursing home next door to their milk tea shop. There wasn't much work for volunteers. Probably because they knew I was still a student, they didn't assign me any heavy tasks. Each day, I simply spent time talking to the elderly, playing chess with them, cheering them up, and listening to their stories. To be honest, the experience of volunteering at that nursing home had a profound impact on me. I heard many real and touching life stories, which made me deeply understand the many difficult choices life presents. Most importantly, it shaped my resilient character, unwilling to yield to fate. It inspired my pursuit of kindness and my reflections on human nature. I think that in my later life, my ability to easily feel happiness owes much to this experience. In my free time, I would often visit the milk tea shop to check on them, helping with cleaning tasks. To humbly admit, I envied them quite a bit. Seeing each other every day, sharing both the sweet and the bitter. Summer vacation passed quickly, and we entered the intense senior year of high school. The class teacher and subject teachers couldn't stay calm anymore. Sensing the critical moment approaching like an impending battle, they geared up, ready for action. The first to make a move was the English teacher. He approached my girlfriend, asking her, "Are you still dating?" The teacher won't interfere in your matters, neither supporting nor opposing. But let me be honest with you. I truly you deserve someone better, and I really think you can choose someone better. You know, for the past 2 years, I've always made you the class representative, and you can feel how much I care for and value you. The teacher must emphasize again, study comes first. The college entrance exam is the most important. These words she later recounted to me, and I remember each and every one clearly. What came after was even more unbelievable. In an even more drastic move, the class teacher arranged for him to switch to a day student, and he moved into the English teacher's home, which was near the school. Every day, the English teacher personally drove him to and from school. This was the kind of privilege the entire class envied, making him seem like a god in the eyes of the students. He was under the exaggerated protection of so many teachers. In the second semester, the history teacher also made their move. I had always done well in history, and the history teacher had been the most patient with me out of all the subject teachers. He found me and said a lot of things. But the whole time he spoke, he couldn't bring himself to look me in the eye. "You're a smart kid," he said. "I noticed that from the first year I taught your class. It's no wonder Liu Ryan is so infatuated with you. Today, I'm here to talk to you about matters of the heart. You've been with Liu Ryan for about 2 years now, right? You probably understand a bit about love by now. Tell me, what do you think love is?" I didn't respond. The teacher began to tell me his story. 20 years ago, there was a young man, just like you, deeply in love with his girlfriend. Every day, he would wake up early and walk across several streets to buy her warm soy milk. He even got into fights with other boys for her. During holidays, he would work to save up money to buy her gifts. In college, he would travel across hundreds of miles just to watch a movie with her. It was a long and lonely road, but also filled with happiness. The most memorable story was one night when he went out for a late snack with friends. He drank a really delicious taro sweet soup, and wanting to let her taste it before she went to bed, he drove too fast. While turning a corner, the car flipped into a ditch. He was so upset that he started crying because the sweet soup had spilled. The history teacher's eyes slightly reddened, immersed in the happiness of his memories. Then there was another time when he bought a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and in his hurry to see her reaction to receiving the flowers, he drove too fast again. At another sharp turn, the bouquet in the passenger seat, due to the force, quickly fell to the side. In a panic, he reached out to grab it, but his hand got scratched, leaving several deep red marks. He was upset again, so upset that he cried, because the flowers were ruined. The teacher paused, seemingly full of endless emotions. "I'm trying to say," he continued, "every time I went to see her, I gave it my all. There was no time to waste. I couldn't wait. I raced against the clock. And at that time, I truly believed she was the one for me. I poured all my passion into her, cleared my life for her, and cut off all other options. My heart was solely focused on her. Later, we graduated from university and even attended each other's graduation ceremonies. Everyone thought we were about to get married. But in the second year after graduation, he got accepted into graduate school, and he decisively ended our 7-year relationship. I was heartbroken to the point of suffocation, waiting outside his dorm for over a month. Later, I found out that, to avoid me, he stayed at a classmate's house for a while. That month was probably the most painful month of my life. I saw no hope at all, yet foolishly held on to all my hopes, only to be met with disappointment and despair. The teacher pushed his glasses up and wiped the corner of his eye with his finger. In the end, he sent me only 6 words. Those 6 words were the last exchange we ever had. "Forgive me, I must fly high." As the teacher spoke those 6 words, it seemed as though he was choking, struggling like he was trying to spit out a fishbone stuck in his throat. He got into grad school, and then he left me behind. I later got into grad school too, but it did nothing to mend the relationship. Later on, I became a teacher, a husband, and a father. I gradually came to understand the true meaning of love is to let the other person move towards a better life, even if the price is letting them go, to protect them completely. After the teacher finished speaking, he lowered his head in silence. I understood his last words clearly. No wonder he asked me what love is. It turns out love is about letting go. I made up my mind and solemnly told the teacher, "Teacher, understand now. Do not interfere with her studies. I will break up with her this week. Completely and thoroughly. A clean break. No loose ends." The history teacher's eyes lit up. Like he had just seen summer fireworks. He slowly lifted his head, filled with satisfaction, but also an inexplicable expression. After a long pause, he finally said, "You still don't get it." I stiffened, my face full of confusion. "Then what is it?" The teacher lowered his head again, speaking softly. He didn't look at me. "Do you know about Liu Ryan's family?" he asked. "She has 3 older brothers and 3 older sisters. Her father was nearly 60 when she was born. Initially, they gave her away. She later found her way back home on her own. But being sent away in the first place left a deep scar on her. That's why we, the teachers, have always paid special attention to her. When she returned home, she didn't receive the care and love she deserved. Her siblings believed she shouldn't have come back. Her parents often scolded her, thinking she couldn't just stay like that. In this distorted family environment, she grew up to be understanding, hardworking, and obedient. Maybe it's because she lacked love, but you're a child full of love. And we all can see that. Perhaps your presence has filled that void in her heart. She has come to rely on you. Maybe even sees you as her family. Her real family hasn't taken care of her much. When she graduated from junior high, her family didn't even agree to let her continue studying. She quietly went out to work during the summer to save enough money to pay for high school herself. She's worked hard for 2 years to stay in school. And now, she's exhausted, scared, and in need of stability and security. Over these 2 years, we've also noticed that your feelings for her are sincere. Honestly, at first, we teachers had our doubts about you. But now, we see that you're someone she can truly rely on. I was deeply moved, but at the same time, I felt overwhelmed with guilt towards the teachers. I couldn't help but burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. The teacher patted my shoulder, then continued, "Do you know what real, stable security is?" I urgently asked, "What is it?" "It's college. It's getting into university. Only by going to college. Only with a university degree can she have lifelong security." Just like my girlfriend, she left me because she was chasing her own sense of security. I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand. As men, we can never, in the name of love, stand in the way of a girl pursuing her lifelong security. This is for life. The teacher's tone grew more serious and more sincere, but I felt like I was suffocating, like countless hands were gripping my throat. Carefully, I asked, "Then what should I do?" The teacher lowered his voice. "We all know Liu Ryan can't bear to be without you. She's the one who's always refused to break up. And we also know you've made up your mind to end things this time. But what good will that do? It will only affect her studies even more. The only way to fix this now is for you to drop out of school." I was stunned. After an entire night of talking, after shedding tears all night long, it turned out the whole conversation was a roundabout way to suggest I quit school. I felt such a cold, wrenching pain in my chest. My limbs trembled uncontrollably. Don't I deserve security too? Don't I deserve to go to college? Don't I deserve to have a future? Why do you have to push me into such despair? This was my most respected history teacher, with his kind face, gentle and scholarly demeanor. Yet he had just spoken the most heartbreaking words in the world. Seeing my silence, he quickly pressed on. "For 2 years, we've seen how much you love her. We all fully support that. And we genuinely hope that you two will end up together. So think of this as a sacrifice for your future together. You know, it's often us men who have to make the sacrifices. Every teacher has praised you, saying you're devoted and loyal, that you're responsible and courageous. Now is the time to prove them right by making a rational decision based on both of your academic performances. Do you think she has a better chance of getting into university? Or do you? I said nothing. He continued. The whole class knows Liu Ryan's grades are excellent. She's certainly heading for a top-tier university. Even the school leadership sees great potential in her. If you had to make a rational choice, I'm sure you'd choose to let her pursue university. Because you're a responsible person. We all know that. Looking at the long term. After she gets into university, her family probably won't support her studies. Her siblings already have their own families, and they carry heavy burdens. That's where you, as her boyfriend, will need to step in. Love is selfless. It's about giving. It's about sacrifice. If you drop out, you won't be a distraction to her studies, even if she's sad for a while. With the support of us teachers and her classmates, we believe she quickly refocus on her education. You'll be sacrificing your education to work and earn her tuition money, he said, which is, in itself, a grand and noble way of preserving your love. You'll be protecting her future, shielding her from the storms. From a higher perspective, your actions are truly admirable and worthy of praise. The teacher continued speaking, but by then I had stopped listening. I couldn't hold on anymore. I found myself trapped in an agonizing decision. At the end of the conversation, I mustered the courage to ask, weakly, if I drop out and go home to work, can I still take the college entrance exam? The teacher was overjoyed. As if my question had hit exactly the mark he was aiming for, he quickly replied, of course, of course. You'll still have that right, but during this time, you must not have any contact with her. He added, we'll handle everything on this end. We'll tell her you're working, earning money for her college tuition. Trust me, I'll speak highly of you, and I'll keep an eye on her for you. And so, the very next day, I packed my things. I knew my mother would be the most heartbroken, but I had made up my mind, and I didn't intend to explain anything to her. I had no other choice. Before leaving the school, I went to the office to get the off-campus safety agreement signed by the head teacher. As I approached the office, I heard teachers chatting and laughing, the sound of celebration filling the room. It felt like a joyous atmosphere, as if they were celebrating something. Just as I was about to knock, I heard a familiar voice. It was the unmistakable voice of the politics teacher, with her rare, powerful contralto. Who could mistake that voice? I heard the politics teacher exclaim excitedly, really? Is he really leaving? That's great! Now there's hope for the bonus tied to the university admission rate. Another familiar voice chimed in, don't worry, he's already agreed to it. This time there won't be any issues. He's definitely going back. It was the history teacher, sounding numb. But my heart hadn't yet reached its limit. Then another voice joined in. Is he still going to take the college entrance exam? It was the English teacher. His tone as calm and measured as always. The history teacher responded, yes. Let him take it. The kid's grades are decent enough, especially in history. If it weren't for his entanglement with Liu Ryan, I'd honestly hate to see him go. The politics teacher scoffed, come on. With his political science scores, whether he takes the exam or not won't make any difference. The history teacher sighed, don't say that. Everyone has untapped potential. The politics teacher replied, sure, I believe that. But the prerequisite is that they have to be a person. I felt a surge of anger. What did I do? How am I not a person anymore? I was about to burst into the room and confront them, when the math teacher spoke up. He was there too. Why was he here? Shouldn't he be in the administrative office as the head of instruction? But here he was, joining in the celebration. The math teacher sighed. To be honest, during their relationship, Liu Ryan's math grades dropped dramatically. -1 in mock exams, she barely scored over 100. I couldn't even bring it up at department meetings. Now, doing this is the only way. It's no different from sacrificing a limb to save the body, like in chess. The politics teacher chimed in, sacrificing a pawn to save the king. Let me put it this way. He continued, if that kid passes the college entrance exam and makes it to university, you can chop my head off and use it as a stool. And after you're done sitting on it, kick it around like a football. Finally, the homeroom teacher spoke up. Enough, it's about time he arrives. I'll sign the papers. The politics teacher urged, quick, quick. Sooner the better. After that, there was a long stretch of silence. To avoid any awkwardness, I waited outside for a while before knocking and going in. The teachers all looked at me with a strange sense of pity, offering hollow words of blessings and expectations. But to me, their words were so hypocritical they made me feel sick. Without lingering another moment, I hurriedly left the high school, where I had spent 10.5 years of my youth. The best days of my 17-year-old self were now behind me. When I got home, I simply told my mother I'm not going back to school. Then I rushed to my room and broke down in tears. My mother, perhaps hearing my sobs, must have guessed the reasons behind it all. She didn't ask questions or make a fuss, but from that day forward, she wept every single day. I knew she had placed all her hopes on me. Now that I had dropped out and returned home, her heart must have felt like it was being torn apart. But what choice did I have? I vowed that never again in this lifetime would I let my mother kneel before anyone. In the months leading up to the college entrance exam, I barely left my room. Aside from meals and showers, I stayed inside, and my mother grew more despondent with each passing day. Her gray hair seemed to multiply rapidly, and all I could feel was heartache upon heartache. After I dropped out, some relatives began mocking us with sarcastic remarks, saying they always knew I wouldn't amount to much. But my mother told me, it's okay if you don't go to school, but you must live with dignity and ambition. I always remembered those words, etched into my heart forever. As the college entrance exam approached, I took one final step back into my school. Memories of all the pain, joy, and turmoil flooded my mind. They had been locked away for so long, but now it felt like they were suddenly unleashed, rushing out like a tidal wave, engulfing everything. After the exam, I found out that my girlfriend had gotten together with her deskmate. What was even more bizarre was that, the day before the exam, she discovered her deskmate had been dating another girl at the same time. Heartbroken, she drank alone. The next day, she missed the Chinese exam entirely. Her deskmate, caught in the scandal of dating two girls, had struggled to keep up with his studies. His grades dropped significantly. The night before the exam, his deceit was fully exposed, leaving him distracted and unfocused during the exam. For many subjects, he didn't even have enough time to finish. Finally, the results were to be released at noon. The tension was like waiting for lottery numbers. I sat in front of the computer for a long time, but in the end, I didn't have the courage to click and check my scores. Suddenly, my mother burst into the room, her face beaming as she shouted, "Son, you made it! You passed the university cutoff." I was completely stunned. "How do you know?" I asked. She laughed and said, "I saw you hesitating, so I checked the results for you." She secretly called my homeroom teacher to get my exam registration number and checked the results for me. As she spoke, she rushed over, grabbed my hand, and looked me in the eyes, repeating once again, "You passed. Son, you really passed." Her voice was trembling, and tears of happiness were flowing down her face. I slowly closed my eyes, relieved. Finally, it was over. Seeing my mother still immersed in endless joy, this moment became the pinnacle of my life. In those months spent hunched over in my room, I used every moment to self-study and memorize textbooks. I had an app on my phone called Original Question Bank, where I practiced questions day after day, so that university acceptance wasn't some random gift from the heavens. As for my ex-girlfriend, because she missed an exam, Her Chinese score barely passed the threshold for a vocational school. Her new boyfriend didn't perform well either, so he also only qualified for a vocational school. In the end, the two of them had no future together after senior year ended. My ex-girlfriend tried to reconcile with me several times, but I declined each time because during those hardest moments, those darkest days, she wasn't there. She would never fully understand me, and I couldn't completely understand her either. So staying apart was the only way forward. Later, her sister sent me a message. Although I don't know what happened between you two, she truly loved you. She locked herself in the bathroom for 3 days straight, crying non-stop, blaming herself, and feeling guilty the entire time. Bonus Chapter 4. The math teacher was also the director of instruction. He once called me, saying, "Wow, you really surprised us all." Now, whenever I give motivational talks to the first-year students, I always use you as an example. I tell them to go look up the records of the former senior from class 25 GU. Check out how he performed in his first and second years of high school, how his grades were. But in the end, he pushed through and made it into a university. No less. In the past, I had my opinions about you, but looking back, it seems I was too subjective. Let me leave you with this. The world is ever-changing, and anyone can be a dark horse. You, without a doubt, were that dark horse. There were many congratulations, though some couldn't fully understand or believe the actions of a boy and girl. They stand on the moral high ground, reading teenage rebellion through the lens of adult maturity, and find it all incomprehensible, as if everyone in the world should live according to what they consider to be the correct order of things, and only events that fall within those reasonable boundaries are considered normal. There were also many who questioned the logic of the scorers, teachers, classmates. Many times I wanted to go back and edit it, to change it into something more digestible. But I couldn't, because this is a true story, and I want to honor both the facts and the readers, even though I wasn't the protagonist. It's a story that actually happened in real life. As for why it happened, why it unfolded the way it did, why things didn't keep getting better or worse, that's beyond my control. I'm just here to describe it. I don't want to make any changes. Novels need logic. But reality doesn't require a closed loop. Because in this real-life story, no one made any changes. Yet each person's story continues honestly. And the world still keeps turning as usual. Sometimes when I think about it, all those unbelievable encounters are just scars of life. And that's okay. In another way, I feel content, because many people can't believe that such individuals exist. Perhaps it's because the teachers and classmates themselves live in relatively perfect environments, surrounded by people who experience normal emotions. It's like asking goldfish in their colorful, warm aquarium to imagine the roaring waves of the Bermuda Triangle. Everyone is stingy with their empathy. We shouldn't expect others to fully understand our feelings. Every person who always speaks harshly to others online will eventually go through something where they long for others' understanding. But it's only a small portion of people who genuinely learn to respect others. They're the ones who encourage others to grow, and it's that small portion of people who nurture and maintain the warmth and goodness in the world. It's easy for someone to mindlessly attack others, or throw out a curse word who couldn't do that. But to genuinely offer kindness and patience to a stranger, that's where the real challenge lies.